today, this session is really about the alternative to forcing people to do the things that perhaps they feel reluctant to do. And that's to talk about collaboration across the food chain. And it's a bit of a warm-up, actually, for the Real Business Conference, which we have at the end of the year, which is going to concentrate very much on how we make this whole supply chain work. And it's traditionally, we're always being told that farmers and farming is really, really bad at collaboration. But Susan has filled me with lots of additional information about how the best collaboration happens in places like this. The best collaboration happens when people are informally getting together, or we're going to hear about better collaboration today, obviously, informally getting together to make changes, to listen to other people's ideas, to be inspired, and all the things really that happen at Groundswell. Today, we've got, so why would we collaborate? I mean, ideally, we never see anybody. We sit at home happily concentrating on what we like doing, and we hope we make a bit of a profit along the way. But there is a sense that if we don't collaborate, we hold back productivity, and we hold back resilience, and we hold back profitability in our farming enterprises. So how can we embed that in the way we do things across the supply chain? And today, what we have here today, we have Lucinda Langton, who's very kindly turned out for the second time for the CLA, so thank you very much. Lucinda is Head of Sustainability at Marks & Spencer's, and she's also led their Farming with Nature program. Now, the important thing about having somebody who's at the pointy end of retail is for us to ask them what they can do and what they're doing already to help us. This is, the top point of collaboration is we're a little bit prone to going around pointing at each other and saying it's absolutely nothing to do with me, it's entirely somebody else's fault. And although I maybe have taken part in this bull baiting in the past myself, today I'm very much not about winding up the people coming from the retail section to say it's their fault. I want to hear what Lucinda's plans for sustainability are doing for us. We've also got Jonathan Arnold, who I've only met recently, but it turns out he organises the barley growing for St Austell Ales. So he's gone massively up in my estimation immediately. And he is there to represent Robert Apple, who are grain merchants, but clearly across the West Country or the whole country, everywhere, partout. They are the grain merchants of choice. I must admit, I did have a little vision of the Mayor of Casterbridge when I heard you were coming. So, and finally, Hallam. Hallam is a dairy farmer from Dorset. I've got that right, haven't I? And Hampshire. Such an enormous dairy farmer that he spans 2 entire counties. So he's continuing to do the thing which everybody else is slightly chickened out of, and do it successfully, and do it well, and do it in such a way that other people, admire and look up to the way that Hallam Mills does dairy farming. He is also very interested in forestry, as am I, and how we can blend those things together. And probably most significantly for today, Hallam has been instrumental in the Environmental Farmers Group, which is trying to help us to collaborate. Because actually, we're really rather boringly small on our own. We cannot get a voice to sell some of our other products, not just our milk and dairy products, but our wider products, our environmental products and ecosystem services, unless we collectivise. And that's collectivise in the good way, rather than collectivise in the Stalin-type way, which led to 6 million people starving. So good collectivisation, not poor collectivisation. So really what I need to do now is just hand over. We're going to give each one of them, and we're all a bit used to this now, we're going to give each one of them 3 minutes, and I'm going to be really strict about it. And then I'm naturally not at all strict. It was 5. The last one was 3. This one's definitely 5. Okay. I think what I said on my notes was, if you plan for 3, you'll almost certainly speak for 5. I mean, look at me, I was talking for 2. So Lucinda is going to start, and then she's also, I really want the people on the platform to be helping me with the questions for each other. Because one of the great things has come out of this, about going to Rootstock earlier this year, was we had people sitting on a platform going, I didn't know that. If I'd known that, I would have been offering this kind of research help. So they have the opportunity to speak to each other as well. So obviously I'm going to need oh God, there's the water and the electricity. health and safety nightmare. So, Lucinda, thank you very much for coming today. And if you could begin at the pointy end of the supply chain.
Of course. Thank you, Victoria. So in reflecting for this, you asked about the ways in which we as M&S collaborate. And I've in reality, the reflection is that we can't meet any of our sustainability goals, including particularly our goal to achieve net zero by 2040, unless without collaboration and partnership right across our supply chain value chain. So there's, I think, 4 ways that we at M&S collaborate. The first really very, very clearly is with our supply chain, and with particularly the farmers and the growers in that supply chain. And we've been working for a very long time with a number of our farmers and growers. I've got growers such as Hunter Pack we've worked with for 45 years. I mean, proper partnerships which allow from both sides investment and trust and ultimately good things to happen. So yes, lots and lots of collaboration with our supply chain. I guess 2 really good examples of that are around, say, something like our milk pool. So we chose 40 farms in about 25 years ago, and we work with them and have worked with them now for 25 years. We pay a cost of production model, so it's very much a fair price. And through the trust that's built up with those farms, we've been able to do some brilliant things on sustainability. We've just launched methane inhibitors to reduce the carbon footprint. We're using low carbon fertilizer, et cetera, et cetera. So milk pool's a brilliant example. And then also our Farming with Nature program, which you mentioned, which is again in partnership with LEAF, the Wildlife Trust, FWAG, and a number of people, others in the supply chain, which work with our growers on the ground to improve nature. So that's, if you like, a really critical area of collaboration. The second area that we work with, sorry, this mic's a bit weird, is innovation. And I think, again, we were not going to reach any of our environmental goals without innovation. So some big partnerships there. We launched an innovation fund last year, which is, we go halves. We offer suppliers, farmers, anyone who wants to come to us who wants to reduce carbon in their supply chain, we'll go halves with them on the investment in that. And that's why we've got a field up in Yorkshire at the moment with Hunter Pack, with robots flying around, and we've planted an autonomous field of net zero parsnips. So you will be able to buy your first net zero parsnips at Marks and Spencer's. We like to pilot and lead. We have a DNA, sort of innovation is in our DNA. So we like to be out there, and we like to do things, if you like, bilaterally potentially on innovation. But once we know the technology works, we're happy to share. And I think that's sort of our spirit there. Thirdly, and this is, I think, for the areas that we can't do alone, we need to collaborate with industry. And so myself and my team were on a number of partnerships, whether it's with RAP through the Quartile commitment, working on water, carbon measurement, food waste. We're working with other retailers when it comes to soy and palm oil. How do we drive, make a difference? Just as the UK in these enormous global commodity markets, that all comes through partnership and collaboration. And I think those collaborations and reflection are really successful when they're action-focused and target and time-bound sometimes. So really action-focused. Otherwise, just talking shops is not, you might think it's collaboration, but if it doesn't achieve anything, it's not actually worth doing. And then finally, I would say the last part of my role really is about collaboration internally and bringing the business with us on our journey. So I think, I and my colleagues in the room spend a lot of time working with commercial colleagues, with product developers, with technical colleagues, to try and build products that engineer sustainability and quality, well, as sustainability is seen by our customers as a core part of our quality. So how do we engineer sustainability in? And no decision is taken at M&S without sustainability and Plan A at the centre of it. So I think we're really lucky like that, but that is a core part, this influencing internally to drive the right outcomes. So I guess that's reflectively how we collaborate.
Brilliant. That came in very... So... 2 things which are very close to my heart. I'm really fed up with people talking and not doing. There's such a lot of hot air around about what we could do, what we might do, what the problems are. So it's encouraging to hear right at the start about what Marks and Spencer's are actually doing, and you, Lucinda, picking that up and saying, what are we doing? Also, we have someone here who can corroborate about this partnership, because Hallam actually grows milk for the Marks and Spencer supply chain. So you can say this is true.
Yes, indeed. I mean, it's very important that we align very closely with our final customers' demands. So we work, as it happens, through Arlo, who sell on to the likes of supermarkets, and through that we are able to get much better value for our crops in dairy and in arable as well.
One of the other things that we're noticing a lot in our conversations with other organisations is that farmers feel quite beleaguered. They feel that they're the ones who are having to pick up the costs at either end. They're picking up costs coming down from retail and costs coming up from the supply side too. And so the experience that Lucinda was setting out there, that they're prepared to go in with people and make an actual solid financial contribution, is really important. It's so that people don't feel so beleaguered. There are a lot of other industries in the farming supply chain that are not so eager to contribute in that way. So thank you very much. So that's at that end. Our next introduction is going to come from Jonathan. And I've given you an introduction to what he does, but also what we're going to hear today is about Robin Appel's collaborative processes that they're going through as well. So we're working our way back down to milking the cows.
Good afternoon, everybody. Jonathan Arnold, Robin Appel Limited. We're one of the last few truly independent grain merchants still in existence. As we heard earlier, back in Thomas Hardy's day, the mayor of Casterbridge, every town or village would have had a grain or a grain and coal merchant, but it's now an industry that's dominated by huge international companies shipping grain and oilseeds all around the world. So we're more of a specialist outfit and very much a market-led one. So our whole ethos from the word go is all about adjoining growers to their end markets and getting everybody within that chain to collaborate and understand exactly what is going on and what is needed. So we're approaching our sort of 45th year in existence, based in Hampshire but operating all across the UK, a completely market-led ethos with complete supply chain integrity, where we're actually looking at a lot of added value products. So we're the sort of silent link in the chain, linking farm raw materials from fields that you'll see as you drive around, and growing a lot of crops on contract direct to end users or primary processors. So we operate across a whole range of crops: barley, oats, oilseeds, pulses, peas and beans, you name it, we get involved. And we are completely integral from the farmer through our own laboratory systems and our own sorting systems through to primary processors, be they millers, maltsters, compounders throughout the UK. So here's just a selection of a few things we do. As mentioned earlier, St Austell Brewery, we grow the vast majority of their malting barley. They were very hot on being having a total supply chain from their farms through their maltings and their malt back into the brewery. Jordan's Oats, we're very active with Jordan's Oats. A lot of the big malting companies, Morning Foods, Wherry and Sons, as you'll see, big processors of pulses. Frampton's, we're very active in the oat drink business, where we're taking in oats, contract grown oats, very close to their plant in Shepton Mallet in Somerset, where it's processed, and probably the first outfit to have a complete farm through to carton, fully traceable system on oat drinks. So as you can see through just a selection of those customers that we're dealing with, a total supply chain from farm right through to fork. So opportunities as we see it, and there's an awful lot of talk around this subject, as to how we take the whole thing forward and how it becomes an audit-proof and a success, and what exactly regenerative agriculture is. And really, it's showing, most farmers are doing a fantastic job and following a lot of regenerative practices, although it's very hard to sort of pin that down through the supply chain. But a lot of this now is being led from the market down through. It's a case of, why is that drive? Is that drive from the consumer and they're willing to pay more, or is it more for sort of ESG and some of these corporate sustainability reporting directives that are coming through? A lot of the crops we get involved with are premium crops and take a lot more hassle to produce. And anything now that's taking a lot more hassle the growers have to be rewarded for doing that. So that is a concept that is now coming through. And we've seen higher premiums over the last few years for milling wheat, malting barley, pulses, and that is something that has to remain, because with the increasing pressure on land, be it solar panels, housing, SFIs, maize for energy, a lot of AD plants going in, everything has to compete for that acreage on UK farms. That is why these supply chains are becoming more and more important. And within that, we have a role where farmers are growing crops under certain protocols, growing the right varieties to the right specifications. If the specification isn't right, we have sorting capability all across the UK to be able to put it right so it's fit for market. None of this is new, but we are now finding that attitudes and the approach is definitely changing. We get a sense that now the sort of race to the bottom mentality is slowly being eroded, where we've seen the danger of importing a lot of energy. We're importing a huge amount of our food. We've lost contracts in the past to very cheap opposition overseas. We're now finding that there is very much a sea change, as Victoria talked about, in that, a lot of UK consumers and supermarkets will now start backing UK-produced products.
Thank you very much. I was interested. For a start, we've spent a lot of time denouncing oat-based drinks in the dairy industry, but you've done, you and your partners, your collaboration partners, have done the sensible thing, which is saying, hang on a minute, somebody wants oat-based drinks? I think we can do that better than they can across the sea, and started actually building that into their market. I think something we often fail to notice as well in embedded carbon terms is you were talking about physically quite a short supply chain. So you're not moving stuff around so much, and therefore the carbon embedded in that is much, much lower. A lot of people would like to ignore that. It's an uncomfortable truth in the supply chain. Has anybody got up here on the panel, have you got a question for Jonathan? Not at this point.
Sat next to a dairy farmer. I don't want to major on oat-based drinks, but as you say, we picked up the demand that most of it's being imported, and actually a lot of it is replacing soya and almond milk coming into the UK, which can only be a good thing.
Yep. Hallam, go on.
You're trying to wind me up again, aren't you? I love it. I absolutely love it. The category of milk and milk similar products, if you want, it's very, very important, I think, looking across to the ever knowledgeable Marks and Spencer, is that the category has to be kept alive. And if, let's say, 10% of people don't want to or can't drink milk, it's very, very important that people like Arla Foods come out with their own oat-based milk drinks in order to keep the interest in the other things in that category. So I welcome the and I've had children, one of whom may be here in the audience, who were temporarily not able to support milk. They've now been told to get on with it, and they drink milkshakes, and they're fine.
By you.
Well, so
by their peers.
I can feel a little natural friction in this, and I come very much from a dairying background myself, but I'd still like to claim the market. If there's a market there for oat-based drinks that are a bit like milk in colour, but nothing like them genetically, then I want them produced here with very short supply chains. Hallam, over to you. So now we're back at where the food's coming from. And one of the things that's happened recently is it dawned on me, because I'm quite a slow thinker, many decades have gone by with me not noticing this, that we've stopped growing food and started growing ingredients. And that really is changing the way we see what we do. 40% of the food that we grow is sent into processing and processed foods, sometimes ultra-processed, sometimes just normally processed. So, it is changing the way that we operate with the ingredients we're selling into the market. But Hallam's going to tell us how we're going to make more money out of it. Yes.
Thank you, President. I'm reading this largely because I got a 300-second guillotine, and this terrifying president next to me will chop me off. I hope this has been a great festival for you. It's been a wonderful one. It's my first, I will admit. Okay, very old, and I'm a newbie, but there we are. I'm a founder director of the Environmental Farmers Group, and that's the most significant and wide collaboration now spreading over England. And I'll describe that collaboration up in levels from 1 to 6. The beating heart of my farm is a crossbred New Zealand dairy herd selling to Arla Foods, who sell on to supermarkets. I do min-till, have done for about 7 years, around the Hampshire River Avon on light sandy soil. So am I doing arable? I still am, but it rotates through the dairy. 98% of my land is covered in various conservation agreements, and I have a first collaboration, which is the soil and with nature itself. The main specialities being breeding lapwing, redshank, curlew, nightjar, woodcock, water voles, moths, and rare reptiles. And we're doing our trial baseline audits. You all do that and much more. So I'm just joining you. Thank you. My second level of collaboration is with the strong brand of Arla Foods, who are highly focused to aligning with supermarkets' environmental wishes. Perfectly written for the lady on my right. Early on, we knew our gross carbon footprint without carbon sequestration. So that's interesting. Even Arla Foods could not cope with how to sequester carbon into grass. They want to wait until it's right. My third collaboration is with local farmers in the Lower Avon Farmer Cluster, and this scales up what farmers do naturally for themselves. This gives interconnectivity for the species I mentioned earlier, and adds inspiration and shared knowledge. And local collaboration also attracts local grants like FIPL. The fourth level is the Environmental Farmers Group, and that comes into play a river catchment area. Now, someone's stolen the prompt thing. Yeah, I know, that's unfair. That's trying to get me over the deadline. I've got to get through all your slides still. Is that one? Hallam Mills DL, that's for Doolittle, don't worry. That's what you want. This is the map, and you'll understand it gradually. I need that, don't I? Thank you. And that is our first catchment area in the bottom of the is for 170,000 hectares. This is the level where EFG, Environmental Farmers Group, was born, and it's a farmer-led cooperative and a farmer-owned with a driving vision, farmers protecting and enhancing nature for the public good. And its mission is to harness scale and member cooperation to secure the best environmental results and financial returns for a wide range of natural capital goods and services. And that's how we drive our value. Our three objectives are cleaner water, species recovery, and net carbon zero. And each member is a cooperative member, and we have an equalization mechanism, which is quite detailed, but basically it means that if you join the cooperative, you are going to pool your environmental trades with us, and we'll give you some money back at the end of the day from all the other trades. We use the contracted services of Natural Capital Associates, a Game and Wildlife Conservancy Trust, and we view the NCA, as we call it, the trusted source of information on natural capital and an experienced broker in the sector. So we've got a very strong and careful governance structure, and that's what binds this collaboration together. When you have a relationship with other people, you need a governance structure. And GWC helps us find good science, and we use Rothamsted for water quality. The research place there. And EFG aims to be seen as a trusted navigator. That's really what we are. And we're helping members to achieve the best deals in the early offset and carbon markets. And later on, ambitiously, we want to attract corporate investment via the TNFD market and nature-related financial market. So on the screen is the EFG progress after 2 very hard years of work. And we're beginning to spread out, and down by the Isle of Wight at the bottom of the map is us in the Avon Valley, going across to the Axe and across to Testenitchen, Sussex, then up to North Lincolnshire, and then the Highlands and Uplands, as I call them, and maybe a glimmer of something on the west. And why do we think scale and collaboration matter? For negotiating power, access to opportunities, and farmer autonomy. And we have a single point of contact and a lower risk as it's English-based and sufficient scale to be able to attract the large corporate investment which we need. So for us at the environmental level, you make the changes that suit your land, it's sufficient scale to connect nature, and it's demonstrable delivery. So this is the last slide, this one up there. And our sort of catchphrase is the EFG is the main opportunity for farmers to demonstrate positive environmental change by collaborating at scale and earning profit for delivering this change. In other words, giving you the ability to earn in the natural capital markets. Thank you.
Thank you. And those people who say farmers can't collaborate must eat their words. You know, that is such a perfect example of doing it at every possible scale, all the way up to make sure that we can access markets which individually we absolutely can't. And at the beginning you had your that's a huge amount of land that's already gone into the project. I feel that there's been a little bit of a stutter in the environmental markets recently. I think that BNG hasn't turned out to be quite as robust and stretched as we thought it might be. Is that what you're finding?
We're finding that the rules are constantly changing. I mean, just this afternoon, we had a lot of BNG rule schemes lined up, and we found out that there's a change in those rules, but we'll work through that. We've been doing that for 2 or 3 years now, and we will get there in the end. But the main thing is that we've got a very powerful think tank, Wendy Barris-Digby in the audience, who's at the heart of the NCA, and for that we get the navigator role through the legal and local authority, the planning authorities. Those are the problems. They keep changing.
They keep changing, and they are not massively quick either.
Not massively quick. And what are we talking, sort of 15 months for a trade?
Yes.
So you have to begin early and do it, and get the right guidance on it. It's a big decision.
I think that's an area that perhaps we're not going to talk about today, which is the collaboration also between us and other arm's length bodies. I know that we've got a project starting at home where they're just segueing between old HLS schemes and moving away from them and making sure that scheme is top and tailed, and we can move into a new scheme. And all we've had so far is people going, "Oh, I don't think we've got capacity to talk about that." And well, we kind of need to get going on this. We need to begin, or we need you to say, you don't need our agreement. What we can't afford is to wait indefinitely.
Well, excuse me, but we're very, very confident that we will get through that market. It's just a matter of butting and opening doors in government and just pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. And we're doing the work, and we'll be there. And that's the role of ESG, is to take the pain and take it very, very early as an icebreaker. Thank you very much. So let's move. So that's the introduction from everybody. I've got a little starter. A couple of weeks ago, I was at a regenerative livestock conference in North Wales called W. I'm going to give it a plug here right now. Next year, when you see it advertised, if you like talking about grass, believe me, that is the place you want to be. I knew so much more about grass by the time I'd been there for 24 hours than I ever imagined I could know. And had the most wonderful and exciting time there as well. But
W has a strap line, which is people, planet, and profit. And I was just going to ask these people who are working on collaboration together, how do we align those things? Should we put, which one comes first? Which order do they come in? Because I'm afraid we need to do all. There used to be a time when people put their hands up when we went to meetings and they said to me, you can't eat butterflies. They said it in a lot of different ways, but that was basically the question. And I've now ended up just saying, I'm afraid that ship has sailed. That one's gone. We have to do all three. So how do you think by collaborating we can tackle people, planet, and profit? And I think I'll start with Jonathan, actually, because he looks like he's dozing off.
No, I was hoping you weren't going to. I don't know if you can put them in any sort of order, because they're all absolutely forefront in everything that we do. And some of what you hear and see today, your heart bleeds for the planet, doesn't it, as to where we are and what we're doing. And ultimately there's probably too many people on the planet, but you're probably not allowed to say that. But it just pressures, doesn't it? I mean, you look at the pressures we've got on chalk streams and things in the south of England, and the amount of houses that are being built with the lack of infrastructure. I've got no answers as to how.
So that's the people part. So, but we have to take those into consideration. We have to, as in what we're doing in your collaborative processes, we also obviously have to consider environment and climate change. What about profit?
Well, obviously, without profit, you don't sort of stay doing things for very long, do you? But I think it all has to be tempered. And as I said previously, the whole sort of race to the bottom mentality is something that has sort of crushed agriculture over the years. But I think we're seeing the ills of our ways. I think one of the big problems is, are consumers prepared to spend more on food? I'm not sure they are. I think there's a very small proportion, but I think it probably starts there. And obviously that hits people hard in the pocket, doesn't it? Especially at the moment. And I'm sure the next government have got it all sorted, but I'm not so sure. But profit obviously is key to everybody's success.
But that's another part of communications in terms of collaboration, is that I have very little cut through with large numbers of people. Similarly, we three are probably all in roughly the same, we probably bump into the same 500 people quite a lot. But Lucinda has access to millions. So is this a place where she has the opportunity to sell our story as well as our product?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, if I'm honest, is probably the primary role of the retailer, in particular a retailer like M&S in this space. So it's actually quite telling to say that our most successful campaign is Farm to Food Hall, which is the one with Tom Kerridge. You've probably all seen it. We've done asparagus and what's on at the moment. I think potatoes is about to come out. Some brilliant stories. And actually what's brilliant about it is that Tom Kerridge is on the farm talking to the farmer. And people can suddenly see where their food comes from. And I think that makes a massive difference. In fact, it's been so successful that if you're not doing anything on July the 4th, and if you're not watching telly, if you don't happen to switch it on, maybe you should switch it on, because actually Tom Kerridge Cooks Britain is coming out now. And that is when Tom Kerridge in a food truck will be going across the nation cooking M&S food in a very obvious way to promote British ingredients, British food. Victoria. So I think, look, we know this works with customers, and actually what's interesting is we air these ads, and then we have to make sure that the meetings on a Monday, we've got this new product being aired on Tom Kerridge. Have we got enough in store? So we know it's going to fly off the shelves because people are that engaged, and it genuinely drives consumption. And you say it's sometimes, well, are people prepared to pay more for good food? Well, yes, they are. Our sourdough loaves with wild farmed wheat, I think they're about £4. It's not your average, but people buy it, and it's flown. So yes, they are.
Well, I think on the bread front, that we know that. Well, I know because I went to a very, very boring discussion from the Bank of England, a governor of the Bank of England, who I hope isn't in the room actually, because he was quite boring. But I understand he had a cold. One of the things that he had a curve from was the amount of wheat in a loaf of highly processed bread, which has gone down from 1880, I think, or 1870, when we first started processing bread, from 80%. Obviously, most of it was sawdust, but 80% in theory would have been wheat going into bread, down to about 20% now in your the very palatable soft bread that children want cucumber sandwiches made out of. So so the fact that people are prepared to pay to eat real bread is really encouraging. Hallam, people, planet, profit.
Well, I think people must come first, because if people don't talk to each other, then there's no plan, is there? And there's no approach to nature. We cannot take nature from above and decode it and pretend that we can act as God. We certainly can't. So we talk to each other. It's quite simple. We find out what's good around us, and we do more of it, and then we extensify our ambitions, and we try and aim higher. So the next thing is the planet, and then out of that will come the profits, because you'll be doing the right thing. It's abundantly clear. And I went to an earlier presentation, and someone had there, it's a farmer called Tom, and Digby was there with him, and it was astounding. He was looking at his replacement of his BPS, and he said, right, I need to replace my BPS, which is X pounds per hectare. And he ended up by having an immediate target, a stretch target, and an ultimate target. By the time he'd finished doing all this good stuff, he'd doubled his margin and has unhooked himself from the intravenous drip of BPS, which we all hate. And we're in the middle of the most incredible farming revolution, and we'll realize what it's like in a few years' time looking back. I mean, I'm not a good historian, but 8,000 years ago, we stopped being nomadic. I'm not going to say go through each year, but thank goodness.
But, a couple of minutes.
Oh, yeah, we've got a couple of minutes. No, but I need one more point, and, corn laws may be the next, and then it's now. And we need the perspective on this, and we need to work with nature.
I would far rather my collaboration was with other farmers and with other people in the supply chain than with a subsidy system which held me in thrall for everything I did and thought. So, but that's a personal view, I think, and I agree. We have an agricultural possibility now, an agricultural transition, which has set us apart, so that people from around the world are looking at the way that we're doing it and the way that it's encouraging collaboration, because now we have to. And I think that's going to be really helpful and useful. Now, we need some questions from the floor. There's a lot of people sitting here in the front row who are looking slightly nervous now, because I spotted them immediately. I knew they'd come to ask Jonathan a question because they're wearing the same T-shirt as him. So have you got any questions for Jonathan on collaboration? They're just going to smile their way out of it. But we've got a question at the back there. Oh.
Sorry, I know most of you, I think. But yeah, just on collaboration, I just wondered what you feel about producer groups, whether you think producer groups are generally a good thing or a bad thing. I know that there are quite a lot of people, most people say, well, obviously producer groups are the way to go. But I know that there's also others out there that say, you need to open this up to everyone, and these things should be available to everyone. But I don't know what you feel about producer groups, because I certainly think that there have been producer groups that have stopped increasing in size for various reasons, and I just wondered what you thought of that.
So does Lucinda like working with them, and does Jonathan like working with them, and does Hallam think they're a good idea? But should we start with Lucinda?
I might not be
quite a political question.
Yeah, I might not be the best person to answer this one. I'm wondering if somebody in the audience would be instead. But I think from our perspective, I've talked about our milk pool. That's probably the best example of a successful producer group in our supply chain, where literally those 40 farms have been collaborative with us and with each other for the last 40 years, producing milk to the highest standard on the high street. That to me is a win. I don't think, I'm just looking at Harry, I don't think we do many other producer groups. There's a mic. Harry's a senior agronomist.
Harry has the microphone.
So I work for M&S within the produce team, and so I have a little bit of experience with producer groups on the produce side. And I'm not sure if you're referring to the fruit and veg producer scheme organisations, or more broadly? Yeah.
I think he's asking a cartel question.
In which case, I think Lucinda has probably given the best answer available to throw it back. Yeah.
If you say cartels, you've no idea how quickly people leave the room. And I know perfectly well there isn't a cartel in operation here, by the way. It was a jest. So, Jonathan.
Yes, very much in favour of them. I mean, we haven't got a great history of cooperation amongst farmers in the UK as opposed to what goes on in Central Europe. But as an ethos, as producer groups, any level of knowledge transfer and where you can get growers in the same room or same field along with buyers further up or along the chain is a fantastic idea, because one of the great sort of missing pieces is the level of knowledge that growers have got about processing and markets as they become sort of more diverse and we go upstream, and likewise talking to buyers and things who, if they're interested, coming downstream to actually understand what's happening on the farm. Because I think that's one of the real missing points that we see is people don't really understand what's happening at each stage. And I think that's a job that we're really striving on. If you look at what we do with pulses, we're really pulling everybody together to understand this is a crop under threat. And if you want UK grown pulses, and if you do want to look at replacing soy and things, you've got to understand the risks and the financial and the economics of growing them on farms. So I think producer groups are a great idea, all for it. But the tail doesn't wag the dog. Everybody's got to be, this whole integrity and understanding right through the chain, has to work.
So an ideal example of collaboration.
Absolutely. Once again, yeah, definitely.
Hallam.
Well, as part of a producer group that spans 5 countries and is 8,000 strong, I think Arla's a decent example of a good producer group with the very, very high standards. So we get paid a higher milk price if we conform to environmental good practice and welfare good practice. So that's a fantastic incentive to make more money. And it makes a real difference, 30, 40, 50,000 pounds on the end of the milk check. It's a whole month's extra milk. That's fantastic. On the grain markets, we don't play very hard in there because we're a small sandy farm. But Salisbury Cooperative, always available, close to us, and they would group them. So the whole point of producer groups is to produce a brand. And that brand will carry the values of the people underneath it. So it'll carry the pulses into market with an impulse, if you want, of all the brand criteria that you want. It's shorthand, a brand for quality and everything like that. So producer groups are great, but they've got to produce a very, very strong brand. Otherwise, there's no point in them.
Thank you. Have we got any other hands? Yes. They're racing towards you. It's the end of another long, hot day.
Thank you. I was just wondering, do you think there needs to be more collaboration between the farmer and the retailer? Is there enough connection between the farmer and the retailer within the supply chain? Generally, I realise with M&S you've got your 40 farms, but more broadly, and I guess Jonathan, especially for you as well, that question, in terms of linking up your...
Yes, well, I was once told by a senior member of one of the big international grain trade businesses that the more opaque a supply chain, the more profitable it was, which is probably the case. So the further you keep people apart, the more opportunities you get. Whereas actually the whole ethos and the way we're going is all about joining up. So yes, I do think there is a lot more. I think there's a lot more opportunity with, fruit, veg, milk, because obviously you've got a shorter shelf life. Grain is a commodity market, isn't it? We have to try and decommoditize that in the UK to become more self-sufficient. And I think we see that as we go along the chain. And I think historically it sort of stops there. and you hear of things like retailers won't allow relationships. You know, they'll move people on after 2 years and things. I'm sure that is changing. You'll be in a much better position because that has to change. You know, this whole race to the bottom mentality is beginning to end, especially for these quality crops, because people want something different.
I think that's a brilliant moment to do a bit of myth busting, isn't it, for Lucinda, to say, you know, where there's transparency, we can have more collaboration.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you've said. And I think one of the things we're now trying to do at M&S is to shorten those supply chains. Because if we can have a short supply chain, we can point out on an advert that, you know, this cow came from this farm. And if we don't know that, then we can't tell the story. And that gives us the benefit to then tell the story, to invest, to do more with nature and with carbon and on that farm. So I think, yes, and that also gives us the opportunity for new business models. And I think a lot of those new business models are much more about our integrated beef model, for example. We know exactly which farms, which cows. We know across all our farms, in fact, down to we can DNA map the cow to every farm. But it helps us and it gives the farmers that fair cost of production, and in some ways, sorry, Jonathan, cuts out the middleman in a way that means that we know the premium that we pay for the high quality food is going straight to the farmer.
And Lucinda, do you think that means that people are more likely to come to you as the retailer of choice?
I hope so.
Not just the shoppers, I mean the farmers.
I hope so. Well, we know that people really do take a lot of pride in producing for M&S. And I know that that's why we have such long-standing relationships across our supply base. So, yes, I think it's a mutually beneficial relationship.
Last word on this to Hallam.
Yeah, Jonathan, yeah, I'm going to have to buy you a pint after that one. But the one thing I don't agree with is opaque supply chains. Oh, right, okay, fine. He doesn't agree with them. That's very useful to know. I thought you did.
No, the point was...
Well, you did say they produced more profit.
Yes, but that was a bad profit.
Bad profit.
As opposed to
I
earlier
missed the word
good
bad.
profits.
Okay.
Not all profits are the same.
Do listen.
Not even once in the wilderness. So, okay, so transparency, good, encouraging. I think that's just the habit of the times, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, we're living in the age of information, and information is key, and we're data-driven. So why not let the consumer, who has a vested interest in where stuff comes from, take advantage of that chain of information so that they're fully informed? I mean, start with food labeling, for heaven's sake. I mean, has anybody ever understood those? I sort of squeeze the packet and think, well, that feels a bit heavy, so I better not eat another flapjack, but I love them. And they got oats in them.
So they're patriotic as well.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So what is opaque is perhaps very bad for you in that sense for me as well on my waistline. But we are demanded of so much information by our buyers. But provided they pay me a decent price, I will provide that information. But if they take it for free, then that is abuse of the market.
Thank you. So I've got a last kind of slightly more provocative question, which is the great cry used to go out in our household. Oh, Mum, that's not fair. I've got quite a lot of children. That's not fair. It's not fair. And there's a lot of it's not fair about people crying out about the supply chain, to which my answer always was, fair by what criteria? So we had a supper once where I divided up pudding as fair by age, and really, really stopped people criticising our fairness for quite a long time afterwards. And my husband and I had a very nice supper, thank you. So is the supply chain fair? Who wants to go with that one?
Well, I'll start. I think the supply chain is fair if you are amply rewarded for looking at the venerable supermarkets, amply rewarded for the effort that is put in. And that has to be writ large and understood by both parties. There are very good signs of it happening, and welcome the partnership that Marks and Spencer has with its farms. I think it's really good. But fairness is really an equal distribution of the benefits to each side, and I think that's what's fair. Thank you.
What a good answer. Jonathan?
any supply chain that involves Robin Appel Limited and ourselves is more than fair, and we deal with some extremely fair customers. For example, the oat market, which is traditionally linked to the wheat market, has become totally detached over the last 2, maybe 3 years. Looks like it will remain so this year. One of our customers who is sat in this audience, and not just for that reason, we have very pragmatically changed the contract terms for crop 24 and 25 to make it more fair for the growers, to retain them and build some long-term trust. That's not the first time that has happened, and I don't think you can get a fairer example of a supply chain that is working for all.
And is responsive. That's the important.
Totally.
Yeah.
Loyal and responsive. Yeah.
Good. Lucinda?
Well, so you used the word supply chain, and I would challenge back and say supply chains.
Okay.
Because I think every single supply chain we have is different, and each of them has their unique economics and the ways they work. But in general, as far as M&S is concerned, we have absolutely no interest in not paying our farmers fairly. So the answer is yes, in my view, but clearly there are some supply chains that are more challenged than others. And I think probably the supply chains that, we know historically, things like cocoa is a much more difficult supply chain for us all to address versus, moving to new models which are much more integrated allows that fairness to be much more transparent. So yeah, I think it depends on which supply chain you're talking about.
Other retailers may apply, I think, on this. Thank you very much. I mean, I would like to put a shout out for the relatively new groceries code adjudicator, who somebody was saying earlier that we need really strong adjudication. And in this particular case, inflation has been our friend, because a billion turnover has been the criteria whereby you become subject to the groceries code adjudicators' close scrutiny. And so a lot more of the retailers have now gone through that 1 billion kind of threshold. And I went with lots of criticisms for the GCA, thinking that they weren't doing a job, they weren't asking hard enough questions. And I think my confidence was hugely restored by actually meeting him. And he is quite the attack dog himself, and he's going out there looking for people who are trying to get round the fairness in these chains. So I think we can call on him and we can go to him, and he will differentiate between the good, clear relationships in this supply chain and the ones that are opaque and exploitative. So I think there's some good news on that. Anyway, that's the end of our time. And thank you, everybody. Not a huge audience, but thank you very much for coming.